All right. So I think this is, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think, Deb, I've listened to your talk the first day with so much admiration and excitement at the same time. It's absolutely amazing to be in this community and listen to the talks. And if I would have known of Glenn's talk, it would have been really easy because it fits really is as a transition to what I wanted to share with you. So I titled this with this talk that I think for the first time, right? And since
Elena, I just want to interrupt. You need to tell people who you are and most importantly where you are now.
I'm coming right after this.
Okay, good. Okay.
I already got there. So maybe I'll jump there and then I'll come back to the title.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. As Brian said, my name is Elena Rosca. I am a faculty at the Ashesi University. And so I thought I'll get you introduced first to Ashesi University because probably not a lot of you have heard of us. So we are a private university in Ghana. And as you can see, I've thought I started with the mission of the school because I think it's really very important and also very descriptive of what we're doing. So the mission of the university is to educate a new generation of ethical entrepreneur leaders in Africa, to cultivate within our students the critical thinking skills, the concerns for others, and the courage it will take to transform the continent. And so when I moved to Ghana, and I didn't know anything about the university until I've actually moved to Ghana, and I found the university, and I thought, yes, this is great, this is really amazing, but really, does it really do anything? Does it put in a dent? And once I've got to know Ashesi, and I've got to know the students, and I've got to know the faculty there, I can definitely say that they're doing this, and they're actually quite successful of doing this. So with that in mind, I wanted to just give you a little bit more introduction on the university. So university is quite new. It's about, I'm trying to think, about 15 years since we started. Currently, we are in an absolutely beautiful location. I'll show you one more picture after this at the top of a hill. Absolutely gorgeous view of the entire city. And as I said, we have a small number of students, 1,250 so students. We have a really good graduation rate in the last 3 years. A couple of things that we are really very proud of is that 47% of the students are women. And although we are a liberal college, we have an engineering college, and we tend to maintain this ratio in every department. And the other thing that's very important is that 42% of our students are on scholarship, some form of scholarship. So a lot of them are full scholarship that they don't have to pay at all, and some of them are or just on partial scholarships. And that's very important in the context of where we are. I know it's not so much in comparison to the US, but in the context of Africa and where we are, this is really unusual, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. We are growing, and we're having countries from the continent being represented. So currently we have 31 students that from different countries. And then if you also can notice that the faculty, obviously it's very small. We do have a lot of visiting faculty. So if anybody's interested in coming and spending a year in
Elena, I want to interrupt you. Do you have a screen you want to share with us?
Yes, you're not seeing it?
No, not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, because it says that you can see it. So let me just reshare then, and try that again.
Brian, I was seeing it.
Oh, yeah. I beg your pardon.
It was up.
All right, can you?
Yeah,
can
I
you
was
see
seeing
now?
it too.
Okay, well,
Okay.
now I see it. Okay, can everyone else see it? Good, go on, I'm sorry.
No problem. And the other thing that's also kind of perhaps it's interesting to note in the context that we have a lot of, really modern campus where we have Wi-Fi in all the academic buildings, we have solar power, and then 50% of our students are housed on campus, and then the other ones just around. And again, I'm going to come back to the idea that if you are interested of being a visiting faculty, particularly for mathematics, but for any other engineering or maybe computer science as well, you are more than welcome to see if you'd like to join us for a semester or a year. Okay, so then I wanted to move on to kind of why and where I think where I found myself. So I found myself being part of the engineering department, which also has a mission of training engineers who are ethically grounded, technically strong, and have audacity and empathy needed to solve the continent's most pressing challenges. And the whole curriculum is really strong on doing hands-on activities in all the classes and a lot of projects. So I found myself in this environment as how do I bring in some of the projects and some of the hands-on in the early mathematics classes and courses that we're teaching. So I found myself teaching differential equations, and so I started looking at doing a lot of, fairly interactive lessons with working out problems in groups and presenting, and, the typical things that we tend to do. The one things that I've also found, and a lot of faculty were kind of a little bit taken aback, I found that I do some parts of the quizzes as completed in groups. And so I found them that they really work, the students get very engaged because it's a quiz and they're interested in it more than if it is a homework or just a project. And they seem to do a lot of learning through at that moment. But I wanted to do something that was a little bit more realistic, right? That would address that idea of where am I going to ever use differential equations, for instance, which is a little bit odd to hear from a future engineer, but it's the first time that they're getting to perhaps question or see mathematics in the context of engineering, I think, or actually try to realize that that's the application for it. And so my project has been really trying to do modeling. So I start talking to them about models. So I'm just going to move on exactly to a very diagrammatic representation of the model that Glenn has just discussed. And so I start with an even easier form of that, where we're looking at just an SIR model. And this is in the first week, and had students to look at this diagram and start developing equations that pair the particular model. And then very, very fast from there, we move on to the SEIR, and we're bringing in a lot more complicated bits to it. And students take these previous concepts that we've talked on the very simplistic model and try to implement them in this a bit more complex model. And this is their first time when they get to actually create a MATLAB script and be able to create some of the graphs, similar graphs to what Glenn was actually showing. And so based on this idea, then from there, we get into a lot of the different, pure differential equations of how to solve the equations and how, which ones, I'm not doing all of them, but we're doing a lot of the typical categories. But it's been always presented in the idea as, how do you know that your model works, right? So my whole perspective was, model is the important part that I would like to get out of this course. And then the, solving equations by hands is a lot of trying to figure out, does your model work, right? For very simplistic ways. And then for the complexity, you're adding the actual computer simulations to be able to see what kind of results you get. So the way we've been doing this is to have students identify a current research article that deals with a real life application using ODE models. And then they have certain tasks along the way. So they have to understand the content of the paper and be able to explain that in different ways. So I'll show you in a bit some of the examples, and then be able to understand where and how they can modify the paper. So they have a choice to either modify the model or do a parameter sensitivity analysis. So these are kind of the outline or the steps along. So they have to find a paper, and we spend a bit of time on how to read some of these papers, because it's quite difficult for them to understand and how to read a paper. And so we spend a bit of time and we do some activities there. Then they have to create kind of a one-slide presentation, usually with a voice note, that they introduce the paper, they give me the link, and they tell me what they plan to do. Then I have them think about how do they represent their project or what they want to do with either a cartoon or a picture or an image or a doodle, that sort of thing. So try to really have a concrete feeling of what they're trying to accomplish. Then we have them, I have them develop the code in MATLAB, and the first task is to reproduce a figure from their paper to make sure that the code is working and it does what it's supposed to do. And then they go in and they introduce their own modification, or they identify certain parameters for sensitivity analysis. And then they have to investigate the effects of the new model and give us an overall outcome of their study. So I was going to show you a couple of, I can go back in a minute on the live websites if you wanted, because it looks a whole lot better in the live websites. So for the 2020, it was in the midst of the pandemic. Obviously, we were all remote. So actually, I've never met these students. Now that we're back on campus, I'm getting to meet them in person. And so I had them introduce, put a picture of themselves on that first deadline, so I can actually at least know who am I working with. And then they gave me a link of the paper, and they usually gave me just the abstract of the paper, so I could read the abstract and then go into the link and find out a bit more about the paper. So I remember looking at the paper that they sent me, and I was like, my goodness, they picked a nature paper. How are they going to deal with it? But I didn't say anything. I just pushed them forward and hoped for the best. So then they have a small, 1 to 2 minutes voice note where they explain what they're going to try to do. And then I had them present their results or all the parts on a website that they had to develop. So this is kind of one of the shots from their introduction to their paper. Then is they're basically taking every equation in the model in the paper that's being presented and explain what each of the variables and what the parameters mean. And perhaps if I get to show you, some of them actually do try to derive some of the equations by hands as well, if the equation is simplistic and they can understand it. And then this is, for example, their replication of their MATLAB plot. So this was a figure from the paper, and then they replicated the same figure within using their own MATLAB code. And then they take, so this particular group, and again, I'll go to the live one so I can perhaps show you a little bit more. I just took some of their snapshots of where they did parameter analysis. So they actually took different models because the paper dealt with a delayed model as well. And so they did a parameter analysis in both, and they were discussing what are the outcomes of these modifications that they have implemented into their model. And then here's an example of, this was their graphical representation or creative representation of the model that they were trying to do. And this was more, if you'd give it to somebody, do they understand what your paper or what your model is about? And they tend to do this fairly early so they can get a much better way of explaining what they're going to be working on. Previous years, I've done a different thing. Rather than doing a website, the students had to present their work into a kind of formatted into a looking like a published paper. And you can see so this one actually looked at used an SIR model for the analysis of a viral propagation of memes on the internet, which was quite interesting. And they actually collected data from Google. So all their dots are actual data that they've collected from Google, and then the model predictions that they were looking at. I've changed it a little bit because sometimes I teach statistics as well. So in the statistics, they also have to do a paper. So I wanted to give them a variation in the second semester when they took differential equations, also to kind of give them an ability to do a portfolio if they wanted to when they apply for their jobs or internships. And so this was kind of the students that some of the comments that I was able to pick from the evaluations. And I was really surprised, particularly for this one, for instance, that says, I like how classes are virtual, but you made concepts as practical as possible. It kind of worked with the pandemic, that they made it very practical. But I have students who have done other models, not just COVID models, and perhaps if I do have a time, I'll share some of those. And then they were making a notice that in statistics, they did similar things, and they were talking about how their understanding of concepts became a lot better and more grounded as they were looking at the projects. So they even wanted more projects than the ones than the one that we actually did. And so I'll leave here with my email address if anybody wants to get in touch, and we can talk some more. And then I'm going to put in a kind of a presentation for Deborah. She's in the next student poster presentation. So she was in my class last semester, and she had one of the best projects but she looked at malaria rather than COVID. And I'm not going to say too much about that, because I think if you like, you could perhaps pop in and talk to her and get her response as well.
That just to intersect, that will be in the main room at 7:30 Eastern US time. Okay.
Great.
Deborah will be there. Okay.
Yes. So thank you so much for that. I think I'll stop sharing here. And if I have while you guys ask any questions, I'll share some of the, if I can, some of the actual live websites, because they look a lot better than actually my screens.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions other than how do I sign up for Elena's course, or how do I get to teach at that university?
You can come. Well, it would be great to have you teach. Really, absolutely. We would be very, very excited to welcome you. So please get in touch if you're interested.
I've been following the growth and the dynamic president of that university for, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. And it's an amazing school and an ethic that they have. Yes.
So we are one of the very few schools now. A couple of other schools have joined in. We have an honor code, and so students have exams. They're not proctored at all. And it does work. And when actually students come in and they tend to not be ethical and cheat on the exams, their colleagues will hold them responsible and accountable for that. So it's really, really amazing. So here's a little bit more of their work. I wanted to show you. So there's another one here. So this is one of the groups who actually were able to found a paper who was fairly easy. So they actually made a journal, and then they went through and did some of the derivations by hand. Here's another one who did a really nice, their description or their doodles was actually under a comic, but it was a story. So I think this one also was.
The students produced this comic?
Yes. So these are the students' websites that they've produced.
What course was this again? Remind us, because I saw the word
differential equations.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And then some of them did, Ebola. Some of them did. Deborah will talk about malaria in her work. Some of them did others like computer. I'm trying to remember. Did some engineering problem, some combustion engine problem. They modified a model to bring in an extra piston or something, I think, if I remember correctly. So.
And how many students in this class?
So this class, it's somewhere between, because it's a second year course, it's somewhere between 80 to 90 students.
And you had them all doing these projects?
Yes.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
I question your sanity, and I'm not so sure I want to come visit you. I'm sorry.
I don't know. So the thing is that, so we teach them. So I teach the class. I have actually, one of the requests we've made, a lot of us teach the courses in 2 cohorts. So we teach 40 students max at a time in a class, but we teach them twice, so back to back usually. And so I think I'm trying to remember, I had them working in pairs, I think, for during this time, 2 to 3 max. So I had about 40 different projects that I had to.
Oh yeah, that makes it just so easy. Only 40.
You know, let me put it this way. I have 2 twins, 4-year-olds. So I think they have been training me of somehow maintaining sanity.
Well, twins can teach you a lot, I think. So.
Yeah.
Any questions? I see a number of people here might want to ask.
Can I say something which is not a question, but which is, I think, relevant a little bit?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. To put Ashesi in context, 2 of my students started African Development University in Niger, which is not that far away. And you have been enormously helpful at getting that university started. So the enthusiasm and the creativity of the students, I absolutely echo. And your university has played a huge role in the continent, which I'm testifying to. Thank you.
Thank you. That is great to hear. We do have a program that we call it an education collaborative. So we're trying to collaborate with other universities, like-minded individuals and universities on the continent to start and support similar programs.